actually requirement, specification. There are few types of specification. Okay, I guess you aware of this specification types, just that now you have to really clearly understand there are four main types of requirement specification. The first type is actually free documentation. Okay, so before we look at the documentation, okay, look at the specification. So you need to know how to specify requirement in order to document them. So specification, we have, I guess you have learned this in software engineering. We have user specification, system specification. Can anyone tell me the difference between user specification and system specification? Anyone? Any volunteer? The difference between user specification and system specification.
The system one is more complete, more detailed.
Yeah, correct. The big difference or the obvious difference between system specification and user specification. User specification, exactly how you elicit requirement from the user. Okay, so it's written from the point of user. So whatever requirement come from the user is actually user requirement. When you rewrite the requirement in detail, okay, from the point of system, okay, from the point of system, then it is system requirement. Obviously, system requirement, now you have some format or standard of writing requirement. So in exam, when you are asked for functional requirement, right, you have to give system requirement. User requirement is not acceptable. Okay, so system requirement, who can give me example of system requirement? Can you give me one system requirement from your assignment? Anyone? How do you write system requirement? Raining, I just left university. You guys are still at campus or already reached your home, hostel? Okay, tell me, system requirement example. So the structure, the structured form, and also the structured form, and also the language that you use, very important. Okay, the system. First of all, you have to use the word the system, which I already explained for assignment in class. During the practical class, I got explained this for assignment purpose. So the system, okay, you have to start with the, of course, it's all about system. What the system, okay, shall do or must do or can do. Okay, for example, the system shall or can or must. This shows the mandatory, the optional requirements, whether the requirement is optional or mandatory or encouraged to do so. Okay, so you have to use certain words like, shall, must, should. Okay, shall and must almost the same. So you may use shall, should, can or may. Okay, these are the common words that we use. So the system shall, for example, you want every user to do this way, then the system shall, followed by allow, okay, or ensure, whatever word describes the requirement further. Who is the user involved? For example, the admin, the customer, the staff, okay, anyone. Okay, after that, after the the role, you have to explain the requirement to log in using username and password, or to log in using their TAUC or TAUMT student email and password, for example. Okay, so reset password using the link sent to the email. Okay, something like that. So you should write in a proper structure. Okay, so that is a system requirement. System requirement cannot be simply written. You have to follow the standard, you have to follow the structure and the proper language, okay, to write the requirement. Okay, next let's look at, okay, the most important part for this chapter. There are two important parts for this chapter, as I said. One is all about the notation, okay, the document the requirement. You have a few ways to document the requirement, okay. This one might come out in exam. Few ways for you to be exact, okay, four ways you can use to document the requirement. Okay, as you can see in this slide, right, first is free documentation, okay, with unstructured, okay, natural language. Unstructured natural language is the main point. Okay, then the next way is structured natural language. Disciplined documentation, structured natural language, by using structured natural language. And the third way is actually graphical. You already learned, I can say 80% of the graphical notation from the previous chapter. What do you call that? Chapter 3. Yeah, you already learned now most of the diagrams in chapter 3. Only left one diagram, which is sequence diagram, will be covered in this lecture. Okay. And the fourth way, how many, are you taking formal method this time? Usually my paper will be taken together with formal method. Are you taking your formal method now? Yes, no? Sorry, I'm driving.
Yes, yes.
So you have to, at least one of you please help me to answer orally so that I know what's going on. Okay, so yes, correct. Okay, formal method, usually formal method is taken together with this course. So formal method, what notation do you use to write the requirement? What notation is that? Quite interesting. Mathematical notation. You are using mathematical notation such as sets, functions, okay, relation to describe the requirements. Interesting way of writing requirement, but not really common way to write requirement. Okay, among these four, based on your experience, tell me which one is the most common way to document requirement. There are four, right? Which one is the most common way to document requirement? Can you tell me? Which one you guys use for most of the assignment to do your requirement documentation? Do you use formal method? Not really, right? Which method do you use? You use free, not free. What do you call the documentation? Which is there's no rules, there's no format, there's no structure. In the natural language, you can write in your own way, whatever way. Do you use that? No. Freestyle is not encouraged. Not encouraged. Usually when user requirement is written, it is written in free documentation. Meaning when the user tell you the requirement, right, they will tell you in the free documentation style. They will use unstructured natural language. They don't know any format. They don't know any structure, how requirements are written. So they will just simply say, okay, I want login button here. They just use common English spoken language to tell the requirement. That is actually unstructured. Okay. Then the number 2 is disciplined natural language. Yeah, disciplined documentation, which is using structured natural language. That's the one, very common one. We use most of the time. We use that together with graphical notation. Together with graphical notation. So usually, right, like or even your final year project or whatever assignment requirements are written using two methods, the second and the third. Disciplined documentation, which you use structured natural language, and graphical notation. Graphical notation, you use graphics, diagrams, models, okay, to assist or to I can say like assist usually assist the natural language requirements. Natural language means you write in sentence. Okay, you describe the requirements in normal sentences with a proper structure. Follow the standard. Okay, then assisted by, okay, or followed by some diagrams. So these two are quite common. Okay, now let's look at the first one. Okay, the first one, as you can see here, unlimited. Okay, what is wrong with, how do you describe, unstructured natural language? The first method, the first type of, requirements documentation, unstructured natural language. Okay, this one is not restricted at all. You may write your requirement in your own way. There's no rules, no. You can express your requirement in any way. There's no a sentence. Like now you see, when I asked you to write the requirement the other day for my requirement engineering assignment, I told you one requirement, one statement. I remember some of you, I can't really remember which group, but some of you I noticed you combine a few requirement in one statement. CRUD, C-R-U-D. You said it's quite simple, right? CRUD always comes together. Create, retrieve, update, and delete. So you said this four I can write in one sentence. No, I told you that's amalgamation. one requirement must be written in one statement. That is actually with some rules applied. But here in this, unrestricted natural language, you can express your requirement in your own way. There is no rules, there's no any format. So unlimited expressiveness, you can use any words. There is no even any restriction in the word choice. You can put any words, okay? And then communicability. So of course everyone can understand. When you are using a language which everyone are able to understand, it is easy to communicate, right? And no training needed. You know why? When we explain or we provide the training, we try to explain in the easiest way where our user can understand. So here, when you are writing the requirement in such way, everyone can understand. So there's no training needed. When you explain or try to communicate with your client regarding the requirement engineering or requirements of the of the project, you don't have to explain to them or you don't have to provide any training. Everyone is able to understand because there's no tool involved, there is no any format or rules involved. So everyone able to understand this unrestricted natural language. Is that clear? Okay, so now can anyone tell me what is pro and cons of this pro and cons of this unrestricted natural language? What is the advantages and disadvantages of using such natural language? Anyone here would like to share some points? Advantages, disadvantages when you are using unrestricted or unstructured natural language. Anyone? If you are really listening to me, you should answer my question. Anyone? I'm using my phone and I'm sharing the whole, whole screen. So it's better if you can tell me the answer orally rather than typing at the chat. So what are the pros and cons, class? Positive and negative part of the requirements. Documentation in this way, unstructured or unrestricted, okay, documentation. Anyone? Okay, the main drawback is lack of clarity. Sometimes requirements can be ambiguous. You know why ambiguous? When someone says something, right, maybe the interpretation, different people understand differently. So you have more than one interpretation, okay, because the requirement got no format, nothing. So you can use your own, the users can always use their own way to explain the requirement. So when this happened, right, what happened, everyone who read the requirement, they can interpret in their own way. So the understanding, different. So it is ambiguous. Such situation is known as ambiguous. More than one interpretation for one statement. So that is lack of clarity, drawback. Okay, drawback. Okay, advantages, you got see just now, right? It is this all three are advantages. Okay, so there's no training needed. You don't have to conduct any training to train them, okay, how to use this UML diagrams, how to understand or how to read the diagrams. Okay, how to draw the diagrams, how to handle the tools, nothing, no training needed, even for developers, your project team, or the clients. Okay, then easy to communicate, that is another advantage. Unlimited expressiveness, you can write in your own way, there's no any restriction, you can just use your own way to explain the requirement. So all those are considered positive. Negative, ambiguous. Okay, ambiguous. Number 2, anyone know what is the meaning of confusion? What is confusion? When the requirement is ambiguous, meaning one statement, two different interpretation, two or more interpretation. When I read one statement, I need to understand what it is meant to be. So for example, when there is a statement, right, 10 people are reading the statement, all 10 people understand the same thing, then not ambiguous. If 10 people understand 10 different things, then it is ambiguous. Okay, not clear enough. Confusion. So due to the ambiguous statements or ambiguity, it can cause confusion. Okay, because of that, it can cause confusion. And the last main problem is amalgamation. Can you see the word amalgamation over here? Can you see that? Okay, what's the meaning of amalgamation? I just told you, more than one requirement written in one statement. Cannot. Every single requirement must be written in one statement each. Remember, every requirement, one independent statement. You cannot combine more than one requirement in one statement. If you have like two requirements in one statement, for example, the system should allow the user to log in and log out. Wrong already. System should allow, even though the login looks so simple, and logout also like just one or two words requirement, you should separate them into two different requirements because they are totally two different requirements. So login works in different way, logout works in different way. So you want to specify the requirement, you have to specify for login in one statement, logout another statement. You cannot combine two requirements in one statement. Watch out this for your assignment. I shouldn't see any statement with more than one requirement. Even though a simple requirement, it must be separated. So that is amalgamation, another drawback. All this can write, if I ask, okay, what are the problems or drawback with natural language, unrestricted natural language, then you can write all these drawbacks. Okay, ambiguous, confusion, lack of clarity, ambiguous, this can cause confusion. The readers can get confused. And the third one, amalgamation, where more than one requirement written in a single statement. Okay, clear? Clear? First type. Okay, the second type now. Okay, second type. Okay, I guess you guys are already quite familiar with the second type. Discipline documentation, where you use structured natural language. The same English or same language is used to write the requirements. The requirements are written using language again. Okay, but then now follow some structure. Like I said just now, the system should, the system shall. So you can use any word to describe the requirement. Okay, then you must make sure you mention whether the requirement is mandatory or optional. Then you have to explain clearly what are the roles involved in the requirement. What are the roles? For example, the system should allow the admin. The system should allow the staff. So you must clearly mention all this. And the structure, one requirement written in one single statement. Okay, so that's all about natural language. Okay, so you can assess these requirements, okay, the structured requirements with decision table, okay, or decision tree, okay, all this. So your requirements will be clear enough. Okay, any questions so far? So your assignment, remember you are given a template. So that template actually follow 100% standardized, okay, standardized and structured natural language type. Okay. You have you remember, right? We have given you all the main topics. Okay, how the requirements are written, how the requirements are structured. First, you have to introduce the project, then you have to introduce the product or the system that you're going to develop. Then comes all your functional requirements, followed by all the other requirements. Then if there is any other things other than this requirements, then you have to put at the end. So this is the main structure. So the same template is given here. It's actually following ISO standard. So the same template as an example of structured requirement, engineering template. Okay, now let's look at the, just go through quickly. You remember the same, right? So first one, introduction, is all about the document introduction. Then you have the product introduction. Okay, the second part is product introduction or product overview. Then the third one is all about requirements. Okay, and 4.0 is other requirement. 3 mainly focus on functional requirement. 4 will be other requirements. Okay. Okay, now graphical notation. So most of the graphical notation I have covered in my previous lesson, but I will go through quickly each notation now. Each example of diagram for this notation now. Okay, so can anyone quickly tell me why or for what do we use context diagram? Quickly tell me, context diagram is for what? What do you show in context diagram? Anyone, please. Quickly tell me the objective of the diagram. Context diagram is for? Do you break down the system in context diagram, class? Hello. Are you listening to me? Oh, I don't know whether I'm talking alone or... Okay. Yeah, yes, listening. Yeah, sorry, yeah, I'm driving because I was sitting in the office, no one there. So I thought, why not, just go back on the way I start class. Then once I reach, I will continue from my laptop. Okay? Because I saw very heavy raining just now. Worried it will be very jam if I leave after the class. 5 o'clock. Too late. Okay. Okay, now let's continue. Okay. So context diagram, very simple. You don't break down the system. The system will be presented, what do you call that, as one whole system, and you will explain how the system communicate with all the external entities. So basically, you show the scope of the system. What is within the system and what is external. External means what is out of the system. Okay, or what is covered in the system and what is not covered in the system. So that is the scope. Again, that is the scope. So basically, you show the scope of the system in context diagram. Okay, the next one, this context diagram is the only example I covered for context, okay, conceptual model. Then the second conceptual model that I covered is actually structure. Remember structure, I covered two models, ERD and also class diagram. So basically, ERD shows the data structure. So for a system, you need to design and develop a database. So you need to identify data that involve in the system. You have to come up with the data structure. How to come up with the data structure? Identify all the entities and then try to find the relationship among the entities. Then each entity you have to determine the attributes and also the constraint. That's it. So that will basically show the overall structure of the entity, the structure of the entities of the system. So you will get the idea how the data structure for the system is. Okay, so that is actually ERD. So ERD usually used for designing a database. Very simple. Okay, what is the other context? Not context. The other structure diagram I discussed for my conceptual modeling. Class diagram. Class diagram, can anyone tell me for what we use class diagram? Even today I got show you some examples of class diagram, right? So basically, what do I show in class diagram? What do I present in class diagram? Anyone? What do I present in class diagram? Okay, for class diagram, we will show the structure of the program, the structure of the system. Okay, so basically how the program is written. Okay, system is developed using programming. You create programs and then you link the programs and you make it work. So from design, you convert into working system by writing the program. So the structure, the overall structure of the program, okay, can be shown in a class diagram. So when you design a class diagram, you know you are helping a programmer, okay, to convert design to development. Easier for the programmer, okay, to come up with the programs. So that's actually what do you call that? Conceptual model, structured conceptual model, ERD and class diagram. The next diagram that I discuss in my class, okay, let me show you. I discuss a few diagrams, I summarize, then I show you examples. So this is context diagram. Basically show the system scope, what is in and what is not in. Then we have the ERD diagram, entity relationship diagram, which is the data structure. Okay, then we have the class diagram. Okay, class diagram, no example given here. Okay, class diagram look almost like ERD, but nothing to do with ERD. ERD is all about data structure. Class diagram is all about program structure. Okay, and ERD can be used for any type of system, but what do you call that? Class diagram usually used for object-oriented programming, okay, to show the structure of the program. If it's a structured programming, then not suitable if you use class diagram to explain the program structure. It won't be suitable, okay? Okay, next. Next will be interactive conceptual model. Interaction conceptual model. For the interaction, it can be interaction between the system components. It can be interaction between the user of the system and the system. Any kind of interaction. how do we show the interaction? How do we show the interaction of the system? There are a few diagrams I covered under this. The first interaction model that I covered is DFD, correct or not? DFD diagram. So DFD diagram basically shows the interaction between, anyone? You break down the system, very simple. You break down the system to components. Okay, you break down the system to components. Okay, the system components. Then you show how each component communicate with each other. Basically, we will show every single main process of the system. Okay, we show every single main process of the system, how they communicate with each other. We show how they communicate with each other. That's interaction model. Okay, then the next one. Okay, give me 1 minute. The next one I discuss is actually use case diagram. Okay, use case diagram. Okay, give me 1 minute. Let me park. Okay, reached finally. So sorry. Okay, now continue. Okay. Okay, where am I? Yeah, the next one is actually where did I stop? Yeah, use case diagram. Okay, use case diagram basically shows DFD, you know, right? You break down the system into all the important processes. Then you show how the how the communication is between the processes, how the user interact with the process, each process, and how the system storage, the data storage of the system interact with the process, or the process interact with the data storage. So basically you will see, you'll show everything. Okay, the user, the sub processes of the system, the main process, the sub process of the system, and also the data storage and all the other external entities. And you show how they communicate with each other, interact with each other. That's why interactive. Okay, it comes under interaction model. Then next is use case model. It shows very clearly how the user interact with, okay, the main interact with the system. Okay, what are the main functions can be performed by the user, and how each function, okay, communicate with the other function, meaning like each what do you call that, component of the system interact with the other component of the system. Okay, so that's about use case diagram. And one more diagram comes under interactive model is sequence diagram. This model, this diagram will be covered in this lecture. Okay, today's lecture. So now we are going to look at interaction model. Okay, so now I give you a diagram. I want you to observe this diagram. I give you 5 minutes break. Let me have a, I get something to drink first. So you guys can have 5 minutes break, and then I want you to study this sequence diagram. So we are starting sequence diagram from this slide. Okay. So I will share this for your information. I want you to, go through this diagram. Later I'll be asking some questions based on sequence diagram. Okay. Okay or not? 5 minutes break. Okay.
Okay, okay.
Okay, before I start my break, 5 minutes break. Who didn't come for the class just now? Can I have reason, valid reason from you guys? Who didn't come for my class just now? Because I noticed the attendance was quite bad. This morning class. Makan dinner?
Me, because of the assignment need to
Pass up.
Yeah, pass up.
What about your students?
Your class.
I mean, what about your classmates, coursemate? They don't have to pass up?
Need also,
then how come they can attend my class? So your priority is for your assignment submission, not for my class. Okay, other reason? What about the others? Headache. Got MC or not? Headache due to assignment. Okay, worried that if you attend my class, your headache will be even worse. Okay, stomach ache. Wow. Okay, what about the others? More than half, no, nearly half didn't come for my class just now.